Hi there, everyone. My name's Isaac Jimenez, and this is going to be my presentation on Supabase, which is a pretty cool technology that I've been working this last quarter, and I kind of want to share some of the learnings that I had about learn using this new technology and how you can use it in your next project. So let's imagine that you just signed up for a hackathon. And for those who are unfamiliar with hackathons, essentially you get a set amount of days to come up with a software solution using um, your tech skills and a prompt. And so this prompt uh, sets you off where you need to create an application that solves a local community problem. And then for this hackathon, you end up deciding that Belinda's Closet would be a problem that needs to be solved. So, for those who don't know what Belinda's Closet, it's a pretty cool program where you can get free professional looking clothes. And they also offer workshops for job interview prep. So, it's a really good resource that's free. Any student or non-student, anyone from the community can come and claim clothes and get the skills to get the job that they are looking for. So you've decided on Belinda's Closet. Now let's start kind of architecting this solution. And the reason why you want to have an app for Belinda's Closet is that you're going to have visibility since you can create a website where anyone can look at the items. And if the people can see the items, they can imagine themselves, wearing it and help in gaining their confidence for their next interview. And so within this application, you're going to have to deal with user authentication, meaning that you are who you say you are. You're going to have to figure that out. So log in, log out, because you would only want like administrators or creators adding items that are shown within this app. You're going to have to deal with an inventory management system. Uh, for permission rules, Belinda's Closet has creators, which are those that can add items to this inventory or just uh, a regular viewer. So they don't have the ability to remove items from the inventory. And so you're going to have to figure out the business logic within this application. And then another thing, which is pretty important, is you need a place to store an image of that item because, I mean, 50% of our brain is dedicated to visual processing. So you need to have a visual element to help entice and really get the user to imagine themselves wearing these clothes, to then have them come to Belinda's Closet and, pick up their clothing. So the current implementation we have right here is the architecture. So you decide Next.js is going to be your front end. And so that's going to have to talk to the back end to get all of the items to render on the front end. And this is done through an API. We're using Nest.js to handle the controller routing. So a lot of the authentication will be handled here in the back end. Uh, and this architecture then uses NoSQL. So MongoDB is used as the database storage. So This is one way of implementing this application, but I can show you another way and where we can leverage Superbase's features to really streamline the development process for this application. So here, what is Supabase? So it's an open source Firebase. So if you're familiar with Firebase, it's essentially a Google solution where they just it's kind of a backend as a service where it generates APIs based on your schemas and NoSQL data. It's like pretty self-managed. It's really popular, but the issue is that it's kind of expensive. So Supabase also has an authentication system, which is used through like the JavaScript SDK. And it also has row level security, which means that at the database level, we are checking whether the person has the right privilege to fetch that data. And later I'll go a little bit more into it. Um, Supabase also has additional services outside of just the Postgres database. It has an S3 style storage, so we could use it to like save all of those images. And also, Supabase has image optimization. So any image uploaded to this S3 like bucket um, gets optimized. You can leverage real-time database or broadcasting features. So you can subscribe to a table. So if somebody ends up adding a new item, you can have a trigger that updates the front end application so you never have stale data, which is very important because when it comes to complex application, the complexity comes from state management and having to deal with how are you going to prevent stale data from the users. You can have, there's edge functions. So edge functions are essentially just server-side functions, and these get executed on the server closest to the client. So the app is pretty like responsive. And they also have other development tools like a command line interface, which you can help uh, use for self-hosting this solution. And they also have a cloud interface that you can interact and even build the entire database on. But it would be using Supabase's services. And, when it comes to these open source products, they like give you all of the software for free. And, but at the end of the day, they have their own solution where they manage it all and you just pay them to deal with setting up the infrastructure because self-hosting it does take a little bit longer because you have to be more knowledgeable on how to set up the backend and dealing with Docker and all this other stuff that pops up that some developers just don't have the time or tolerance to deal with. Okay, so let's compare between these two architectures. So Supabase here, um, essentially you're going to have the client, which at least let's say we're using Expo or even web. It would be uh, running in the application here on the client side, and then it talks to just the Supabase services. So in here is all that S3 like bucket-like infrastructure and also a Postgres database. Now, let's compare it to the current architecture. Well, here you have the front end, let's say Next.js, um, is running the EC2 instance, but that EC2 instance also has to run the back end which is going to handle a lot of the business logic uh, in making sure like you have the permissions to look at certain resources. So let's say in Belinda's closet, do you have the ability to uh, add items to the database or just to read? And then here you then have a connection to the cloud database. So if you're comparing at least these two architectures, let's say that Next.js, we use Next.js for at least this architecture here. It would be just talking to the Supabase services, and it's just a direct line to the database rather than here you have a middleman having to route and deal with handling some of the business logic for fetching data out of the database. So let's go a little bit more deeper on how you in this hackathon how you can leverage some of these features. So with Auth, since it has an authentication system, you just use their SDK. So you just pull up just basic functions of login, sign up with email, log in, log out. It's pretty simple to kind of implement. You'll has also have the options to create magic links. So if you've ever used an application where you just sign up and then you just click a link from an email that you received from them, then and you don't have to put in password or anything, that's a magic link. And you could also implement OAuth, which is like, say you want to use your Google sign in to verify who you say you are. You could also implement that within Supabase. All right. So storage. So since uh, essentially Supabase is Postgres and more, it's specifically a wrapper for Postgres. And since we're using Postgres, one special feature that you have is row level security. So that is another way to make sure that um, a user uh, has the ability to read or insert new data to a table. So it's just another level of security. You could use the broadcast real time, as said earlier, um, to update users of new changes. And you can use that from the application level, or you can use the edge functions to fire an email. Hey, there's a new item that was entered to the inventory system. Right. So why would you choose Supabase? Well, because it's Postgres. Postgres has other features like PostREST, which generates the API endpoint. So essentially, what you're doing is you are writing raw SQL and implementing the business logic at the database level, and then anything that that SQL produces gets returned into a JSON object. Another thing is that Supabase, you can self-host it. So let's say you have your team, you don't want to pay that like $600, let's say right here, $600 a month for some of the access, and the free project is kind of limited. Then you can self-host it. So you can maybe create your own instance using AWS services. Since it's only a couple days, it'd probably be pretty cheap. Um, and one cool thing that you can do with Supabase with the command line interface tool is that you can connect to a remote server and just update all of your backend through using their migration features. And so would having to deal with touching less files because you're writing all that business logic in the database means that you have less chances of possibly causing errors, which means that there is possibility for more experimentation or with fast pivots. Okay, so case study is Shift app. So yeah, initially when I was developing this app, I actually used their Studio Cloud to create a database using Supabase's cloud services. And so here you can see all the scripts that I kind of wrote and when I was kind of playing around and figuring out the database architecture for this application. And I was able to get pretty far on just using this GUI interface. See, because yeah, I believe we don't have any table. Yeah, we only have, so I can't test this code, but you can, yeah, build everything just using this just by highlighting it and then just pressing run. Enforce business logic. Yeah, as I said earlier, the closer the business logic is to like the database, just the better because you could write the business logic in the front end and then send that off to the database level, but you want to do it both the front end and back end just to make sure that there is no possibility of just bad data getting submitted into the database, which compromises the data integrity. With Shift app, I also used a lot of functions to call like queries to the front end. So doing it this way, I am able to decouple the front end and back end logic. So the front end just calls this defined function and returns a JSON object of all the data. And so this helps with making sure that the database is transactional since uh, remote remote procedure calls are essentially implicit transactions. And that means that it is part of ACID, which is atomicity. Uh, the other one, consistency, isolation, and durability. So using RPC functions covers atomicity, which means that it's an all or nothing, meaning that if there's any errors in between the steps of the function executing, it just rolls back as if nothing happened. And consistency is, well, if you have atomicity, then that means you have consistency where you're not putting in bad data into your database. So when shouldn't you use Supabase? Well, what if you have maybe let's say a social media app where you have a lot of data uh, that needs to be stored, but you also need fast access to that data. So like Redis, yeah, this solution wouldn't be great just because the cloud is really limited. And even if you self-host it, it's just not designed to be like super quick for like real-time data. If you don't need any user authentication, you can still use the Postgres aspect of Supabase, but there might be a lot of overhead and might as well just get a vanilla Postgres backend because it'll be more lightweight. And as yeah, saying earlier, it's not very performant for so if you have maybe like high speed trading data, yeah, this is not a good solution for that kind of application. So One of the things that made me pretty successful in implementing a lot of the features within the Shift app is that it just has a really active community. There's books out there that you can read up to learn more about the architecture. You can find so many YouTube videos out there. Whether there's many people that are passionate about this technology, since it's helped them quickly create MVPs. There's discourse out there, and they actually recently came out of a beta. So they've been proactively launching videos, kind of focusing on certain aspects and how you can implement in certain projects. So next steps. So one thing that I would highly recommend is to implement Supabase backend with an old project. Just because if you have an old project where you only have the front end interface, yeah, just use the Supabase Studio to then create the backend and really, finish off and create the MVP of that project. Because like at the end of the day, having more like finished projects shows that you have more experience in end-to-end projects, being from there from the beginning and solving all the problems with that takes it to that MVP status. And Supabase, since you're essentially writing business logic at the SQL level, mm, it reinforces that you understand the SQL fundamentals, which are extremely important because all applications, well, yeah, you can create the front end. It's not a complete application if you've solved the back end problems. And this technology can really get your hands dirty and run into problems and really provide you just more experience in uh, creating a full stack application. Well, thank you very much for watching this video. Yeah, feel free to reach out to me and you all have a good day and have a good quarter. Bye.